Hey, hi everybody. Hi Rainbow.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good. Okay, we're going to get started. Hello everybody. Welcome to Leadership Talks. Our subject for this episode is empowerment, and we are joined by Rainbow de Benedetto, who I've known for a long time, and she is now the chair of UT Staff Council. So we're getting her perspective on leadership and again focusing in particular on empowerment. Thanks so much for joining us, Rainbow.
Thanks for having me.
So the way that this works for people who haven't joined us for an episode yet is that it's streaming live on Facebook right now, but we're going to focus on the interview, and you're welcome to make comments and ask questions in the Facebook feed. We probably won't have time to get to them during the interview, but Rainbow will log on to the HR Facebook page and answer any questions or respond to any comments. So we appreciate all the activity that you can give us on that Facebook feed. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so first question in 2 minutes or less. Tell us your career story. How did you get to where you are professionally today?
Well, some of it was definitely luck. So I graduated from UT with a degree in sociology. I really did not know what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that helped people ideally, but I didn't know what. So I worked in social services for a few years after college. And I found it somewhat fulfilling, but I missed the intellectual challenge that I had had at school. And so I was looking for something different, and I just fell into, I saw an ad, I think it was in the paper, that's how long ago it was, for the UT, at that time it was called the Information Analyst Training Program, so a software development training program. So I came back to UT, I was hired into that training program, which is a 6-month program, taught how to program, how to design systems, and have been doing that at UT ever since. So I didn't really expect to spend my whole career at UT, but I have pretty much done that, and have been in various areas of the university over time. So I've gotten to see it from a number of different angles, which has been very, very interesting. There's just always so much to learn about UT. So.
There is, it's a big place. So you said you came back to UT.
Well, I meant I was in UT as an undergraduate student for
Gotcha.
4 years, and then
Okay,
didn't
good.
really plan on working for
Right.
UT. Was right back where I started. I was even in the same dorm for a little bit.
Oh, wow. Oh, great. Okay. Okay. So what do you suspect or know bothers people about you as a leader? Or this isn't the same question, but similarly, what is your leadership weakness?
So it's an interesting question. And I think when I was younger, I used to think of strengths and weaknesses as being two different things and kind of opposite things. My strengths are these things and my weaknesses are those things. And as I've gotten older, I've come to feel that those are really two sides of the same coin. Some of the personality characteristics or traits that we have can be strengths or weaknesses depending on the situation and how they are deployed, I guess I would say. So I am not a dynamic public speaker. I don't have a big personality. I'm not the charismatic picture that you may think of as a leader. I tend to be a more quiet and reserved person by nature. So I think for some people, I may not fit their conception of what a leader looks like or how a leader acts for that reason. I do think that there are benefits that come with that as well, because I try very hard to listen to people and really hear what's going on and think about what's going on and not respond off the cuff as much, but try to think through things and plan and be strategic and that sort of thing. So I think, again, it's sort of a strength and a weakness.
Mhm.
It's just
Yeah,
a little different.
I think that we've made some ground over the last years with that bias towards the gregarious, extroverted leader. Certainly that presumption still exists, but I think more people are understanding that that personality isn't always the best fit for a leadership role, and there are a lot of benefits to having introverted leaders, more introspective, more willing to listen, less off the cuff. So I hope that we've been making more ground in that way anyway. This is I forgot to mention this part for new listeners. We always start the interview with the same 3 questions, and we end the interview with the same 3 questions. This is the last question of the standard questions for the intro. What does leadership mean to you, Rainbow?
So again, you kind of have the stereotypical, you're at the top of some organization and you're setting the direction for that organization and kind of steering the ship. And I think that is a valid definition, but I think it's very narrow. So I would also say, to me, it's about taking initiative. It's about being strategic and kind of seeing the context for your actions. And I think that is something, I think you alluded to this when you came to speak with us at Staff Council last week, that anybody can show leadership regardless of what position they're in. So within the role that you have, you can show initiative. You can look around and see, you know, what problems there are, what things could be improved, and you can take action to make things better. And so I think of that as leadership in any level of the organization, or really in anything that you do.
I agree. And I think that that's something that there's always this assumption, and I think it's a fair assumption, that a leader has to have followers. But really, I think it's important to understand that a leader doesn't necessarily have to have people reporting to her. It can be a problem solver, like fixing a process or a system. And that in itself is leadership, because it has such big effects and positive impact for an organization or a team. And that person may not have people reporting to her, and that's still leadership. Okay, let's get into empowerment. And we're just going to cover, sort of establish what empowerment is first, and then we're going to start to dive into more of the role of empowerment with leadership. But first, what is empowerment? What does empowerment mean to you?
So I guess, you know, the word itself means giving people power. So or allowing them to have the power that they have, I guess, maybe a better way of putting that.
Enabling them.
So, yeah. I think there are a couple of both sort of an active and a passive, perhaps, part of that. So it is both allowing people to speak up, share ideas, give suggestions, be creatively engaged in whatever process is going on. But it is also actively working to encourage that, give people tools and resources and maybe training, whatever they may need to be able to do that effectively. So I don't think it's enough to just say, you're empowered, you can speak up, you can do whatever you want, but you need to model behavior, you need to encourage behavior, you need to give tools and resources and work through it with people so that they are comfortable, so they understand what you're asking of them. All of that. So it's a lot of different things that go into making that realistic and making it practical.
Okay, so if you were to visit a workspace, a workplace, and just observe for a day, let's say it's a team of people, maybe 12 or 20 people, would you be able to sort of assess whether or not the people are being empowered, or empowerment is being practiced by leadership?
I mean, I don't know that you can be certain in the span of a day that it's not present, but I think there are things that are definitely indicators that it is present. So if you go to meetings and in all the meetings, people are sitting quietly and one person's talking, that would be a little bit of a red flag to me. Whereas if you go in and there's a lot of active discussion and a lot of ideas being thrown around and maybe even a little bit of conflict, but in a professional way, that to me would speak to that being a more empowered workplace.
So what other like telltale signs are there? If you are, in particular, you want to make sure, if you are a leader coming into a new organization, what are some telltale signs that people feel empowered, or that empowerment is being practiced in the past?
Well, I think I'd be interested to see what has come up sort of from the grassroots in terms of what people are doing or how they're doing it. Is it just that projects are set up here and people work on them, or are we doing this new thing because somebody had an idea and we ran with it? And just, I don't know that it's something you see visually as much as you'd have to kind of get into what is being done and how it's being done. But you could see that. You could see, oh, we started this and this happened, and we have this group that sprung up to tackle this, and you would see that sort of dynamic energy, and you would see creativity at work. I would.
It doesn't happen in a snapshot of time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all a process.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
Everything.
what about the opposite is the same true? What would you be looking for as a manager or leaders who are watching this? What could they be looking for to see that people don't feel empowered in their organization, either, you know, longitudinally or in behavior? What can they look for?
Well, I mean, if you ask people for feedback in a meeting and nobody will say anything, maybe there's a reason that they don't feel comfortable saying anything. It's hard, that can happen occasionally, but if that's a pattern, then to me that says for some reason people are not comfortable sharing their thoughts for whatever reason. And so there's some issue there. If there's a lot of negativity, I think you can get a lot of negativity in an organization if you have people who want to be creative and engaged and feel that they can't be. That can create this sort of, that's where you see a lot of, I think, kind of gossip, but like negative gossip and whispering sort of things, because things are not out in the open. You can't actually have the conflict and resolve the conflict openly. It kind of goes underground and festers under there. So I think
there's resentment and yeah. Okay, so let's get into the really important stuff then. So how do we do it? How do, as leaders and managers, what are the techniques for empowering an organization or empowering a team?
Well, to start with, I mean, making it clear that that's what you want, because I think that is not always encouraged, right? So there are definitely a lot of micromanagers out there, people who, that's just how they've been taught to do it. Like this, I tell you what to do, that's my job, that's your job. And that has the appeal of being very simple and straightforward, right? You know what you're supposed to do, they know what they're supposed to do, you don't have to think about it as much. Whereas being empowered is messier. It takes more thought, it takes more planning, it takes more managing actively. So making it clear that that's what you actually want, and that when you tell people you want them to speak up and you want them to be engaged, you mean it, and that there will not be negative consequences to them as long as they're professional. I'm not saying it's a free-for-all. You can't go and start shouting in meetings and that sort of thing, but to express constructively, constructive criticism, that sort of thing. I think if the leader can start by saying that that is welcomed, but then when people test the waters, they can affirm that, yes, this is going to be responded to positively, and this will be encouraged in real life. And then also, I alluded to making sure people have the resources that they need. Hearing when people bring things to you, this is a problem, or this is something that I'd like to try, and working with people to the extent that you can to make that happen, or to address something that they've brought to you as a concern. And it's like a daily thing where you can't just do it once and be done. That's something you have to constantly be doing. I think even things like being open to people shifting their role. I mean, I think we want to retain people and we want to grow people. And in order to do that within an organization, we have to be open to perhaps moving people around and trying different arrangements, letting people take on different responsibilities and things like that, where they can grow actually within the organization instead of having to leave to, get more responsibility or try something different that they're interested in. And so there are a lot of things you can do, but it also is it is a constant thing that you always have to be doing. You always have to be reinforcing it and planning for it and trying things and accepting that some things will not work, and that's okay. This is something I think in our culture that's being talked about a lot more, that failure is a good thing. Failure is something we're going to learn from. So we will try things, and if we can try things in a small scale and lightweight way and say, okay, that didn't work, let's try something different, as opposed to it being a large failure. We don't really want those. Right. We want to try things out and build on them. But it is messier. It involves more risk. So people have to get a comfort zone with that and be willing to take those risks, because coming out of that, we will have a better product or service, or whatever it is that we're doing, it will be better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get to this a little bit later in a couple of questions, but the other thing to remember is that it's not easy. And like so much in leadership, it looks great on paper, and you can sort of go through the motions of empowerment and say the right words, but if you don't follow up with the practice, then it's going to be more damaging than if you hadn't even spoken those words and made this sort of impression that you're encouraging empowerment.
And you do still need to, it doesn't let the leader off the hook in terms of having to make decisions at certain times. You can have a participatory process and you can have people engaged in contributing, but at a certain point, somebody has to make a call. Yes, we're going to do this. No, we're not going to do this. And so I think the leader has to be willing to sort of explain their reasoning and to hear constructive criticism, but at the end of the day, there are decisions that will have to be made. So it doesn't let you off the hook in terms of still having to do that from time to time.
Mm-hmm. Last interview we had was with Julie Schell, and we talked about that failure as well, and her perspective being the failure is not okay. You know, we don't want it. We don't want it to happen, but we have to know how to respond to it, and that's the important thing. And that's one of the prices that I think a leader pays with empowerment, is that you're going to see some element of failure, and then you have to know how to respond to it properly. So this is a little bit off script a little bit, but I do want to kind of point out or talk about why. So if it is difficult, and if it does involve some level of risk and failure even, why do it? Why practice empowerment? Why not take matters into your own hands? You've paid your dues, you have experience to know how things work. Why go through these motions of empowerment? What's the point?
Well, for one thing, when you get to a large and complex organization, I don't think anybody can know everything that there is to know. I don't think it's possible. They may know a lot, but there are always things that they don't know. But more importantly, I think this is very clear. 2020 has made this more clear than it already was. It's one thing to say that it's okay to just preserve the status quo. We have always done things this way, so we are just going to keep doing things that way, and that is fine. That isn't working very well anymore. There are just so many things changing and so much that an organization has to contend with. And you may, in February, if you asked us what we were going to be doing this year, it is not what we're doing this year. I think that there is going to be more of that, hopefully not more things like COVID, but who knows what the world is going to throw at any given organization any day. And so if you are an organization that has empowered people and that has actively engaged in creative people, I think that you are so much better equipped to respond and react to whatever event may occur that throws you for a loop than if you are a safe organization that is just planning to do the same thing that you've always been doing, maybe with tiny innovations here and there. But I think it's very hard to turn on a dime when COVID happens or something else happens that throws all your plans out the window.
Mm-hmm. You've touched on this a little bit already, but I want to return to it. Not all leadership is top down. Sometimes it's middle out. Sometimes it's bottom up. How does empowerment work in those scenarios where maybe somebody doesn't have that formal authority, but still wants to encourage empowerment amongst their team? It's a trickier business.
It is a trickier business, and I think some of the ability to do that depends on whether it's at least tolerated, even if it's not encouraged. But I do think you can always look around and see, what could happen better. And maybe that's just noticing that your colleague is really struggling with something and talking with them about it and giving them new approaches and ideas. Or maybe that's, suggesting something to your manager that, hey, I had this idea. Is this something we could think about? Or I noticed that this issue is going on and I thought maybe we could try this or raise it or whatever it might be. It's kind of putting yourself out there a little bit more and doing whatever you can do in your space. And I think in a positive work environment, even if it's not being actively encouraged, that will be noticed, and people will start naturally kind of coming to you with questions or naturally seeing you as a resource because you are somebody who is willing to help and is perceptive and thinks about things. And so I think some of that can happen organically within an organization, or a person can deliberately seek to do that within whatever space that they are in. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It definitely did. I mean, one thing to think, this isn't maybe so much a question as a comment, but if you have some other thoughts, I think that it's going to be also be different if you have absentee leadership from the top. So the
Right.
person who is informal authority is sort of absentee leadership versus a leader who is informal authority who was actively working against empowerment. Because again, there are reasons why someone would not want to empower their staff or their team, right? And so that's going to be difficult to try and have an environment or a culture of empowerment when amongst your peers, your colleagues, when somebody's working against that. And that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and coming back to your question of why, I mean, again, if you foster empowerment and you encourage empowerment, I think there's sort of a virtuous cycle that happens where you attract people who then are engaged and creative, and you build on that and it gets better and better. But if it's the other way where it's being suppressed, people who have a lot of energy and ideas and want to do things are not going to stay, or if they stay, they will be very negative. So it's not, I would actually encourage people to not stay in a situation that is damaging to them.
Agreed. Agreed. It's toxic, and it's not worth it if you have somebody who is that oppressive and is discouraging empowerment. It's ultimately toxic and it's not worth it. You need to find alternative career. Okay, so sort of along that line, what about empowering yourself as a leader? How does that factor into this whole concept of empowerment, and how do you do it?
That's an interesting one. So I think one thing is having the same patience with yourself that you try to have with other people. I know for me, like just being confident and saying, I can do this, I'm the right person to do this, is sometimes a challenge. Like there's that whole imposter syndrome thing, and am I really supposed to be here? And as a woman in IT, sometimes there's a bit of that too. I've been sort of the only woman in a room of 20 people, and it's a little bit intimidating. What do people actually think of me? But you can set goals, you can recognize which things are holding you back and develop strategies to work on those things. You can look for mentors or people who can help you, whether they're a formal mentor or not. And those could be peers, those could be colleagues, friends, it could be a supervisor. And there are any number of people in different ways. It could be somebody who is willing to formally be a mentor to you and give you advice directly. It could just be a friend who's can give you a pep talk when you need it. It can also be somebody who's just in a leadership position that you look up to, and you kind of look and see, how do they do things, and are there ideas I can take away from that? You can request professional development classes and trainings. There's a lot of resources available to us, like with LinkedIn Learning, as you well know. There are tons of classes out there that are available to us as staff or employees that we can just, either during our workday or on our own time, we can take advantage of those and start kind of thinking of things in a different way, or getting a new perspective, or gaining some skills. So I think it's that same thing, kind of evaluate your situation, set some goals in terms of where you would like to be, and figure out stepping stones that can help move you in that direction. And if you are able to do that, a lot of times opportunities just magically appear sometimes after a while, and you didn't realize you were getting ready for this exact thing, but suddenly, you're there and you have the skills, and it all works out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, there's some evidence out there that people actually stay with toxic bosses a little bit longer than those who are with, nurturing bosses. And my theory, the reason why, is because they're in an oppressive relationship. And so they feel disempowered. And they feel like they're not good enough because of the relationship they have with that boss. And so they stick it out in that, thinking that they can't find another path out. So I think one of the first things in terms of empowering oneself is giving yourself permission to understand that you're better and you need to move on. And you're absolutely right. Professional development is critical to that. Learn, it's so important. That's what we're all about at Learning and Development. So take advantage of it and learn new skills and new competencies, strengthen those competencies. And that path, even if it's great to have a path and sort of really think like, where do you want to be? But sometimes the path sort of forms around you as you're developing your own skill set. So yeah. Okay. We only have a few minutes left, so let's get into the closing questions here. What are you reading currently?
Well, like many people, I'm sure, I'm reading the How to Be an Anti-Racist book by Ibram Kendi. We have a book club going in our unit that we're going through a chapter a week. So we're going kind of slowly, but we're making our way through that. I'm reading a book called On the Map, which is about how conceptions of the physical representation of Earth have evolved over time and how cartography has evolved over time.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of a random thing. It's just
interesting, yeah.
So yeah, I guess
that's great.
More news than I want to read.
Yeah, me too. I think How to Be an Anti-Racist is on my shelf somewhere right now. It's a great book. As long as you brought up book clubs, that's something we can help at the L&D. We can help people form book clubs, and we can set up an MS Teams. Can set up individual teams. We can help you do that. It's a great format for virtual book clubs. And we are going to be starting a campaign called UT Reads. We're going to try and get everybody at university and the university community to read the same book. And this first campaign is going to be The Sword and the Shield by Peniel Joseph over at Center for Race and Democracy at LBJ. Nice. It's a dual biography of Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. So stay tuned for that. Awesome. That's the first time we've even whispered it. So, but we'll be making announcements in September. What was the hardest thing that you have had to do as a leader?
Well, there are lots of answers to that question, I think, depending which angle I look at it from. Since I'm here by virtue of being on staff council, I will talk about what was probably the hardest thing for me since I've been chair of staff council, which is only a few months. So right after I became chair, it's when all of the Black Lives Matter protests and all of that was happening. And the easy thing was knowing that a response was needed, but actually you may have seen I sent out a solidarity statement on behalf of staff council with relation to all of that. And being able to find words that felt like they were worth sending out and meaningful enough and crafting that and putting myself out there in that way was very difficult. It was rewarding, but it was very difficult. It was scary. It was a struggle personally for me, as again, being sort of that quiet person who not given to big sweeping public announcements typically. Right. But I'm very glad that I did it. And the response was actually overwhelmingly positive. Of course, you're never going to make everybody happy. Some people will not like what you say. Right. And
those are the ones that stick with you, unfortunately. But
yeah. Now we need to actually do some things, because symbolic gestures are great, but concrete action is more meaningful, I would say. So that is our challenge now for the rest of this year, this academic year, to see what we can do in terms of concrete changes and making the situation substantively better.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, great. Last question. Give us 2 key pieces of leadership advice.
Okay. So I would say it's not about you. So as a leader, it's very easy to start sort of being ego-driven and feeling important that you're the leader. And so kind of checking yourself that, am I doing this for the right reason? Am I making decisions for the organization and the people in the organization, or is it getting a little personal? It's a good thing to kind of check yourself on a regular basis. And then always move forward. This was actually my grandfather's motto, sempre avanti. I don't know if he meant by it what it has come to mean to me, but again, sort of with the confidence thing, it can be easy to make a mistake and then really beat yourself up about it. We're all going to make mistakes. So learn from the mistake. Don't blow it off. Accept that it happened. See what you can learn from it. Move forward. It is not going to help anybody by you just kind of being stuck in that.
Overly critical.
Yeah, because again, you're sort of making it all about you, but in a negative way, and that's not helpful either.
Right.
So.
Right. Great advice. Rainbow, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll be in touch in our relationship with UT Staff Council. L&D looks forward to being allies with UT Staff Council and helping continue this conversation about learning and development. Thank you, Rainbow.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.